The bank's sign now loomed over the farm's weathered gate. Zeke Harlan, an 84-year-old veteran, stood motionless, his gray eyes fixed on the horizon. The crowd gathered at the county courthouse didn't know the weight of his silence. Decades ago, his name alone had chilled the hearts of enemies in distant jungles. At that very moment, a convoy of sleek SUVs, led by a vehicle bearing a small American flag, sped toward the courthouse. Inside was Senator William Bill Travers, a man whose life Zeke had pulled from the jaws of death in Vietnam. What would you do if a hero who bled for their country faced such betrayal? Type unfair. Zeke, tall and lean despite his years, stood with a spine forged by discipline. A faded army cap, its insignia barely legible, sat atop his silver hair. The farm, 18 hectares of rolling fields and orchards, had been in his family for 5 generations. His hands, scarred from shrapnel and calloused from decades of toil, clutched a dogged journal, its leather cover worn smooth by time. It was a humid July morning in 2025, and the steps of the Oak Ridge County Courthouse buzzed with a restless crowd. Neighbors whispered, speculators scribbled notes, and bank officials adjusted their ties, all drawn to what they saw as a routine foreclosure auction. To Zeke, it was a wound deeper than any he'd suffered in war. Harlan Farm, 18 hectares, the auctioneer announced, his voice cutting through the murmurs. Bidding starts at $25,000. The bank's representative, a young man named Tyler Reed, barely 30, stood confidently in a tailored suit. He could have been Zeke's grandson, but his polished demeanor betrayed no empathy. Zeke didn't flinch or plead, he only lowered his head, the weight of the moment pressing against his chest. For months earlier, the final notice had arrived like a sniper's bullet. After his wife, Clara, succumbed to a long battle with leukemia, medical bills had gutted their savings. A merciless drought followed, scorching crops for 3 consecutive seasons. The loan Zeke had taken to install a new irrigation system, meant to secure the farm's future, had become an anchor. You should sell now, Zeke. His neighbor, Amos Reed, no relation to the bank man, had urged over coffee at the diner. Take what you can and walk away. But Zeke Harlan didn't retreat. Not in Kisan, not now. This isn't just land, he'd told Amos, his voice low but firm. My great-great-grandfather cleared these fields with an axe. My father taught me duty under these oaks. My daughters learned to dream on that porch swing. Now, standing on the courthouse lawn, memories flooded back. Monsoon nights in Vietnam, where survival demanded grit, cunning, and brotherhood. The courthouse was his firebase now, but no squad stood beside him. The auctioneer, a stout man with wire-rimmed glasses, scanned the crowd, his expression flickering with unease as he met Zeke's gaze. Per county regulations, the original owner may bid. Mr. Harlan, will you enter the process? A hush fell. Everyone knew Zeke's pockets were empty. Developers, their briefcases stuffed with plans for suburban sprawl, exchanged knowing glances. Zeke straightened, his military bearing snapping into place like a flag unfurling. No, sir, he said, his voice steady. I won't bid for what's mine by right. A few investors smirked, already carving up the fertile land in their minds, rows of identical houses with names like Orchard Estates, erasing the Harlan legacy. Then we proceed, the auctioneer said, his gavel poised. Zeke closed his eyes, picturing Clara. She'd always said, it's not how much land you hold, but how deep your roots sink. His roots were woven into this earth, nourished by 5 generations of sweat, love, and sacrifice. Signing the auction form meant surrendering it all, but Zeke knew honor wasn't in titles or acres. It was in standing tall, no matter the odds. A young reporter, Emily Vargas, sensed a story beyond the numbers. She approached, notebook in hand. Mr. Harlan, how does it feel to lose your family's heritage? Zeke's eyes, sharp despite his age, met hers. Young lady, you don't lose what's carved into your soul. Emily's pen hovered, her instinct telling her this was no ordinary foreclosure. She scribbled, trying to capture the quiet dignity of a man who seemed unbreakable. Behind them, an elderly couple, Martha and Jonah Tate, watched with heavy hearts. They'd known Zeke since the 60s, when he'd helped them rebuild their barn after a fire, working through the night despite his own chores. "It's a damn shame," Martha whispered, wiping her eyes. "After all he's done for this town." Jonah nodded, his arthritis locking his hands, but his mind racing for a way to stop this travesty. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "We begin at $25,000. Do I hear $30,000? Hands shot up, real estate moguls, developers, and a few out-of-town investors. Zeke didn't watch. He opened his journal, its pages filled with names of men he'd saved in '68, written in hasty script, some stained with mud or blood from battlefields. The crowd didn't know these pages held stories that had shaped a nation, stories that would soon rewrite this day's outcome. Bids climbed swiftly. $40,000. $55,000. $80,000. Each call was a dagger to Zeke's heart, not just for the land but for the erasure of his family's story. Among the bidders were men in pristine suits, their hands soft, their knowledge of farming limited to spreadsheets. Some snapped photos of Zeke, treating his loss like a social media post. One man, Nathan Cole from Horizon Development, raised his paddle with a grin. His company turned farmland into luxury condos with ironic names like Harvest Hills, bulldozing history for profit. $100,000. Cole called, his voice dripping with confidence. Zeke's grip tightened on his journal. Few knew it contained not just names but detailed accounts of valor, medals earned, lives spared, written in his own hand under flickering lantern light. Each page chronicled moments when ordinary men became giants, like the night near Hill 875 when Zeke, bleeding from shrapnel, dragged 4 wounded soldiers to safety through a storm of gunfire, his own strength fading but never breaking. $120,000. Another bidder countered. Across the lawn, Dr. Sarah Nguyen, a cardiologist at Oak Ridge Medical Center, watched Zeke, her heart sinking. She leaned toward her colleague. "That's him," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The man who saved my uncle." In '68, her uncle, Lieutenant Michael Tran, was pinned down in an ambush near Pleiku. Sergeant Ezekiel Harlan carried him 4 miles through enemy territory, dodging patrols, his own leg torn by shrapnel. Michael lived to become a teacher, a father, and a pillar of their community, always saying, "Zeke Harlan gave me my life." As bids hit $150,000, Sarah slipped away, dialing her phone with urgency. "This is Dr. Sarah Nguyen. I need Senator Travers' office, immediately. It's about Ezekiel Harlan." Miles away, in the state capitol, the name sparked a flurry in Senator Travers' office. An aide flagged the issue, urgent, decorated veteran, farm auction, Oak Ridge County. Travers, reviewing trade policy, stopped cold. Memories of Vietnam flooded back, the stench of smoke, the scream of mortars, and Zeke's voice, steady as granite, pulling him from death. "How long until it's over?" he barked, already grabbing his jacket. "Less than an hour, sir. Get the car and a state police escort, now." Back at the courthouse, bids reached $180,000. "Going once?" the auctioneer called, his gavel rising. Zeke thought of his daughters, Rachel and Hannah, now in Seattle and Boston with families of their own. They'd offered to pool their savings, but he'd refused. "This is my stand," he told them, unwilling to burden their futures. His hand brushed his side, where shrapnel still sat, too close to his spine for surgery. "Some fights you carried alone. Going twice." Nathan Cole stood poised to claim the farm, already picturing the profits from Harlan Heights. The auctioneer drew breath to say, "Sold," when sirens wailed in the distance. Zeke didn't react, his mind back in the jungle, where sirens meant choppers coming for the wounded he'd shielded. The crowd turned as 6 black SUVs with government plates roared into the lot, flanked by police cruisers. An American flag fluttered on the lead vehicle. Whispers spread. "Is that Travers? Why is he here?" The auctioneer's gavel froze as Senator William Travers stepped out, a bronze star pin gleaming on his lapel. His security detail cleared a path as he strode toward the podium, his presence commanding silence. Zeke, lost in memory, didn't notice. Travers raised a hand. "This auction is suspended, effective immediately," he declared, his voice ringing across the lawn. The auctioneer blinked, flustered. "Senator, we have legal procedures." Travers cut him off, pointing at Zeke. "This man saved my life and 9 others in a firefight near Plaquemine in '68. The crowd gasped. Zeke turned, his eyes widening as he recognized the senator. Travers' voice thickened. "Under heavy fire, Sergeant Harlan held a perimeter for 10 hours, wounded, until evac arrived. I was a young lieutenant, got shot. He carried me 2 miles, then went back for others." Travers approached Zeke, the decades dissolving. "Bill Travers," Zeke said softly, using a name no one dared speak now. "You made something of yourself." Travers smiled, his eyes misty. "Because you gave me the chance, Zeke." He turned to the crowd. "This is how we repay a hero. By stripping him of his home?" The judge overseeing the auction, Harold Grayson, approached, visibly shaken. "Senator, what are you proposing?" "No proposal," Travers said. "As chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee, I'm ordering a review of Mr. Harlan's case under the Veterans Land Protection Act. This auction is halted pending investigation." Tyler Reed, the bank agent, stepped forward, his confidence crumbling. "Senator, we followed all protocols." "Did you apply the mandatory 180-day grace period for combat-decorated veterans over 75? Travers asked, his tone icy. Reed's silence was damning. Zeke stood still, his journal open to a faded photo of a young Travers, arm in a sling, beside a bloodied but unbowed Zeke. The crowd grew quiet, some lowering their heads in shame, others in awe. Judge Grayson called a recess. "Mr. Harlan, Senator, my chambers, now." Inside, Zeke spoke, his voice calm but heavy. "Bill, you didn't have to come all this way." Travers' expression softened. "I did, Zeke. Some debts don't expire." Grayson, shifting uncomfortably, said, "The bank has legal standing." Travers slid a folder across the desk. "Read Section 14 of the Veterans Land Act. This applies directly to Harlan's case. My staff is also investigating how many other veterans in this county lost land due to similar oversights." Grayson scanned the document, his jaw tightening. A knock interrupted. Reed entered, subdued. "The bank's regional director is on the line." Over speakerphone, a tense voice spoke. "This is Margaret Lawson, First Oak Ridge Bank. We've reviewed Mr. Harlan's file and there were errors. He qualified for our Veterans Relief Program, which would have restructured his loan." Travers' eyes narrowed. And yet he was never informed. Lawson faltered. "An administrative oversight. We're offering refinancing at 0.75% interest, a 4-year payment freeze, and we'll cancel the auction." Zeke's hands, steady now, rested on his journal. Travers pressed, "What about restitution?" After a pause, Lawson said, "We'll establish a $400,000 fund for veterans facing foreclosure and pay Mr. Harlan $150,000 for damages." Zeke hesitated, but Travers nodded. "Take it, Zeke. It's not just for you, it's accountability." Zeke agreed, his voice low. "For Clara." Outside, the crowd had grown, locals drawn by texts and calls about the senator's arrival. As Zeke and Travers emerged, applause erupted. Zeke looked uneasy, unaccustomed to attention. Nathan Cole approached, his earlier arrogance gone. "Mr. Harlan, my uncle was in Iraq. I didn't understand before. I'm sorry." Zeke shook his hand. "Land's not just dirt, son. It's a story." Cole nodded. "I'm pulling Horizon out of farm acquisitions here. Some things should stay untouched." Dr. Gwynn rushed forward, tears streaming. "Mr. Harlan, my uncle lived because of you." He named his son Ezekiel. Zeke smiled faintly. "Little Sarah Tran. Your uncle was a fighter." A history teacher, Mrs. Clara Evans, approached with students. "Mr. Harlan, would you visit our class? Kids need to know heroes walk among us." Reed returned with papers. Mr. Harlan, our CEO's also funding a $750,000 Ezekiel Harlan Veterans Agricultural Fund to train veterans in farming. Travers clapped Zeke's shoulder. Justice is slow sometimes, but it arrives. As the crowd dispersed, Travers turned to Zeke. We need to talk about your Distinguished Service Cross, Zeke. It's time you got it.